My dear students of class 8A and 8B, in my previous class, two mistakes I committed, for which I sincerely regret. First one, at the time when I was going to finish my class, it was a slip of tongue. Instead of German monk, I used the term Roman monk, because Martin Luther was German monk. Initially I used German monk, but at the end of my teaching, by mistake I used the term Roman monk, but he was not Roman monk, he was German monk. And another one, by mistake I named him Martin Luther King, but he was not Martin Luther King, he was Martin Luther. But once by mistake I used the term. Martin Luther King was the president of, he was an American, but he was not German. Anyway, now today I am introducing a new lesson, and it was also taught you, but it is the last lesson I am teaching. I am re-explaining you, then I shall start teaching the rest of the lessons which are left. Then I shall complete my syllabus. Now, Industrial Revolution and Imperialism. Introduction. In my introduction, I would like to say that human beings always lived within the societies. Human beings always live within a society and communities throughout the history. And these communities were usually not large, but basic needs such as food, shelter and clothing could be arranged by the communities themselves most of the time. In our world, human beings always are habituated they are making money in the interest of themselves in order to make sure three things: food, shelter and clothing. They were dependent on others for their daily needs very scarcely. When the discovery of new lands brought in an increase in trade and commerce with overseas territories, it also led to the emergence of bigger towns and cities. Whenever the navigators discovered new sea routes, new lands, new cities throughout the world, it led to the emergence of it resulted in an increase in the population in different parts of the world. Basic needs could not be provisioned from within the communities themselves anymore, as the demand for goods grew higher. Hence, in order to meet the demands of the growing complex population, the age of industries eventually began. So, with the advent of a new era, new age, where modern facilities were there and population had been increasing from time to time, the need of the human beings, the need of the people were increasing day to day, and this requirement were increasing leaps and bounds. That's why they decided to make money. They decided to earn much more amount of money from large-scale industries, and ultimately the age of industries began. The age of industries. Now, the Industrial Revolution and its process. Industrial Revolution and its process. The Industrial Revolution was the process of change from an agrarian economy to an economy dominated by the industries and machines. It was the period in which machines changed people's way of life. The methods of manufacturing goods and domestic system of production were replaced by the factory system, and goods and services were produced at a large scale. This process began in Britain in the 18th century and spread to other parts of the world. So earlier, people depended on their small-scale industries. That's why their earnings also were less. But with the introduction of new machines, a number of factories and industries were set up, and new machines also were installed there, and these machines started working instead of manual process. As a result of it, the small-scale industries were declined, and large-scale industries, large-scale industries helped the people to earn a much more amount of money. And this process began in Britain in the 18th century and spread to other parts of Europe, other parts of the world. Now, third point, Britain's role during Industrial Revolution. Britain played a vital role in Industrial Revolution because the favorable condition of Britain helped them to be a part of Industrial Revolution. Use of common currency, pound sterling, and a strong monopoly over major markets allowed Britain to surpass the other big nations like France, Spain, Holland in markets access. So most importantly, Britain had also experienced what many scholars have referred to as agricultural revolution. During this period, the constitutional monarchy had become deep-rooted and a prolonged period of peace had prevailed. That's why the role of Britain is very important during industrial era. Next point, decline of feudalism. Decline of feudalism. Much, in feudal Europe witnessed a new era. What is this? The hold of the feudal lords over lands weakened. The hold of the feudal lords over lands weakened as large holdings of lands were consolidated. People who were forced to surrender their lands, their belongings to the feudal lords in the interest of large agricultural production, land ownership, which was transferred to the feudal lords. Now it was transferred from the hands of the feudal lords to a new class of enterprising merchants and landlords that emerged in Britain. The state authorities allowed these landlords and merchants to transfer huge tracts of lands in their own favor. Why? Because they intended to set up a number of factories and industries. For establishing factories and industries, huge tracts of lands were required. That's why they started acquiring lands. Land came to be concentrated in a few hands, which allowed the landlords to invest more in machinery, thereby increasing the output of productivity of the land under them. The rich people who were living there in England, the state authorities encouraged them to invest their money to set up factories and industries. So the rich people, the rich people of Britain, they came forward and started investing money to make it double. A number of moneylenders came forward to invest their money during industrial age. Next point, decline of small-scale industry. Those people who were earning money from small-scale industries which were totally dependent on manual works, after the introduction of the new machines during industrial age, they all became jobless people and became the workers of the large-scale industries. They all became apprentices of the large-scale industries. So their income also was increased. They were provided with training, and instead of manual work, machines started working. Machines started producing goods, and it flooded the large market of Asia, Europe, and Africa. The parliament passed laws on the commons. These areas were then restricted in the ideas of ownership were introduced. These developments had a twine effect on the British countryside. Lands which were acquired by the landlords, new landlords, for making it industrial belts, it helped the moneylenders, it helped the rich people to purchase lands for being the industrialists. So the term industry was totally changed. A new wave of awakening was formed among the people throughout the world during Industrial Revolution, my dear students. It is due to that reason the large-scale industry helped the people to lead a modern lifestyle. People living in the villages, now they shifted from villages to towns and cities. They receive modern system of education from cities. But the conditions of the laborers who were known as, or who were so-called cheap laborers, their condition had become very miserable. No system was provided for them, no correct system, so that they could stay in a healthy atmosphere. The place where they were forced to live was very unhealthy. The quarters which were made for them, there was no system of passing sunlight, air. There was no proper ventilation. So almost all the laborers would die prematurely without being treated. There was no health facilities for them. There was none to look after them, under which condition they were living. They were forced to work, and they worked from day to night along with the family members with a very low wages. That's why the condition of England had very miserable during Industrial Revolution. The moneylenders remained busy in making money. The industrialists remained busy in establishing more than 2 or 4 factories. And by this way, there came a new wave, new growth and development in industry during Industrial Revolution, Industrial Age. Up to this, my dear students, thank you.